Okay, sounds good. All right. So we are recording, so we'll just start now. Um, Thank you everybody watching this video. This is our August community call for the Consciousness Collective. So every month we get together, I bring in a leading marketer, coach, business trainer to talk to us about growing an online business as light workers, as coaches, leveraging spiritual and universal laws. So enough of the old, fear-based like hustle mentality. Let's leverage these laws to attract our ideal clients and just serve in the way that we are being called to serve. Today's speaker, she's actually a member of the Consciousness Collective as well, is Sarah Rose, spiritual CEO. She coaches and mentors light workers and spiritual entrepreneurs into really stepping into their power and spreading their light into the world. Today's topic is about energetic marketing. We're going to be discussing the lighthouse effect and the yin-yang sales cycle. So I am myself super interested. I'm a marketer. That's my background. Obviously, I didn't learn energetic marketing back in the early 2000s. So this is like a new way to look at marketing that I'm super excited about. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Sarah. I'm going to ask her questions as they come up, and hopefully they'll kind of relate back to you guys and what you're doing in your business. When this is posted on Facebook, feel free to add your questions also in the comments, and Sarah can go through and answer them as well. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us more about this energetic marketing concept.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And yes, definitely post your questions or comments if you're on the replay, and I'll still respond to them all personally because I know everybody's got busy schedules and will be popping in later. So that's totally cool. So my name is Sarah Rose, and I'm a spiritual life and transformation coach. I call myself also a spiritual alchemist because I like to work with spiritual principles in a practical way. And it's really transformed my life. And when you touched on, let's get out of the hustle, let's get out of the burnout, let's get out of the overwhelm, there really is like a paradigm shift. I'm getting chills right now as I talk about like how, especially as light workers, especially as teachers and healers, how we are to get our messages out in the world, because traditional marketing strategies are going to work for us only so far. There really is like, there's a process, there's a cycle to this, to being able to receive and put out content into the world that is truly authentic, transparent, raw, vulnerable, which is what people really resonate with nowadays. And so traditional marketing strategies, certain ones can complement your marketing formula, but what I'm going to teach today specifically is something that I feel is like the root. It's like the foundation. It like has to be there. Otherwise, the other things like the funnels and the email lists and the fancy sales pages and all of those other bells and whistles that are beautiful and do work and, you know, are great to have, even though they're not necessary completely, will fall short, will fall flat with your results if you're not magnetizing your message, if you're not coming up with content that truly connects with the soul of the person that needs your gift, period. Like all of the rest of it's not going to matter, right? I think we can probably be in agreement there that's sort of like the foundation. And once you nail that, then you can open yourself up to Facebook ads, or you can open yourself up to these, you know, a formula or a funnel or systematize something so you can have a course rate related around it and things like that, and have passive income coming in and all of these other things. But it's got to come from a place of soul creation first and foremost. And so there's a definitely like the yin yang cycle that I'm going to share is sort of like the process and the formula that I share, which ties into the lighthouse effect, because the lighthouse effect is part of the actual content creation process, which is under the umbrella of the yin yang cycle.
I love it. And like, why not leverage the feminine in all of us, the universal divine feminine, as part of our marketing? Because I think business and marketing for like up until now has been such a masculine dominant field, right? Like I picture when I think of business, like the men in their suits and their briefcases, and like there was just like not even an ounce of feminine in that approach. And here we are as females, like try to replicate this masculine dominant way, and it's not authentic for us. So of course, like, why not embrace the feminine aspects of business? And that is exactly, I think, what you help women do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's getting chills again when you talk about this, because we are moving into this. You know, I feel like, you know, there is like this divine rising feminine energy, and we've come from an overly masculinated society which comes from a place of overdoing versus being, a place of doing versus being. Doing for the sake of doing, not coming from true alignment will burn you out. So a lot of the women that I work with, they come to me because they have burnout, they have overwhelm, they have, you know, they're overly frustrated with the process, and they're doing for the sake of doing, but they're not coming from a truly aligned place. So the formula that I'm going to share today in the yin-yang cycle, it's just like a step-by-step process, but it's really simple. But there's like lots of little caveats to it that require you to be able to, like, you know, strengthen your intuition is obviously part of this. And so that's like a whole nother thing if you're not open yet to receiving. But I'm assuming if you're watching this video that you've already opened up to receiving your intuition in a more like profound way where you're open to guidance. So this is specifically tailored towards spiritual entrepreneurs on the light worker, teacher, healer path. Mostly like, so everybody knows that the yin cycle, the yin energy is the more feminine energy, and the yang energy is the more masculine energy. So here's a few things that I'd like to share on this. And how did I want to get started? Okay. I don't want to backtrack too much. I have my notes. I'll just look off to make sure I don't forget something. Okay. So I'm going to sort of use like this this is just specifically around creating content. So you can create content with ease that speaks to your client without trying to figure out what it is you need to do, because you might sometimes be stuck with, oh, what should I create today? What should I need to talk about? Things like that.
But when you're saying content, you're talking about like when we're showing up in Instagram stories, like when we're putting out blog posts, like social media posts, like the whole spectrum of content, right?
Spectrum of content, primarily like online, anything that you're using to communicate via print, audio, or video, like online. So I use the same process for creating posts. I use it for doing my podcast episodes. I use it for creating my videos, my free live stream trainings. I use it for creating my programs. So the first part is being in the receptive energy, which is the yin energy, being open to receive guidance. And really creating a sacred space for that. So you first set the desire of what it is that you want to receive. And then you open yourself to receive the download, like you create space for that. You start to follow the intuitive nudges. You start to follow the spiritual breadcrumbs. But mainly, we're working with spiritual principles right now. So if you haven't figured out that you're already being guided on this process, I'm sure you probably already have at this point. When you ask, you shall receive it. So you're sort of opening yourself up and creating space for it. Whether that means you're meditating and allowing yourself to create sacred space for a download, or it happens a lot with me when I'm on the treadmill running or things like that. So I'll specifically create my day around things that will allow me to be more receptive and open, knowing that I'm about to receive a hit. Like I'll call in a hit, like an intuitive nudge, an intuitive hit. So I'm strategically asking for my guidance to come through. And obviously I've cultivated that muscle over the years through meditation and mindfulness trainings and opening up to intuition and things like that.
Can I just say on that, like how counterintuitive that feels when you're in your masculine? Like I feel like I've been working a lot lately on getting into that receptive mode. So you've already launched the desire, you know what you want. Mm-hmm. And then the masculine approach is like, all right, like, let's do it. Let's hustle. Let's get these results. And it feels when you're in that energy so counterproductive to just be like, okay, I'm just going to sit and meditate. I'm going to go in nature. And that action of like being in the receptive mode, letting the resistance flow is enough. Mm-hmm. It's just even more powerful than the action. So I just wanted to comment on that because it is like a awkward shift when you're used to operating in the masculine.
Yeah, because the first thing you think of is like, okay, let's say you wanted to create, like you wanted to come up with a live stream series. Then the next thing you're going to want to, most people would do would be, well, what should I talk about? Well, this doesn't make sense. Well, maybe I should talk about this. Well, this is what they probably want to hear. And this is what will probably sell. What's going to make sense that leads up to my product? And like all of these other logical reasoning ways, logical justifications and rationale will start to pop up of how you can create it. You're already in your masculine energy when you're doing that. You're not yet receiving an intuitive download. You're trying to control the process. Yeah. You're not being, this is very much teaching you how to open up to channel, like channel higher guidance, soul wisdom, collective consciousness energy, and channel it through you in a way that it comes out through you. And you're literally turning spiritual into material through you as the medium.
Love it. Love it.
It's really, this is just opening, it's really a way of we're opening up to channeling. So there's a trust and a faith that then has to set in immediately when you have this, and you know that this is what you're calling in, and you've had the desire bubbling up even. So you might not set your desire might come to you. So you have to understand your desire is also a manifestation in and of itself. So when you receive a desire, can you trust that that desire is already divinely guided? That it's already planted by something that you're connected to that's much larger than you. So therefore you don't have to go figure it out. It's already unfolding. It's already unfolding. You have to get out of the way and let it continue to unfold without letting your fear-based overcompensation mechanisms, your overdoing, overcompensating masculine energy, because there's divine masculine energy and then there's the misaligned, and I'm going to talk about both of those. But we automatically are in a society where we're conditioned to automatically sort of take the bulls by the horn and try to figure it out and try to make stuff happen. And that's even more so for powerful women that are independent, that are driven, that have big dreams, that have big, strong ambitions, that want to get somewhere and have a lot of things to do. Like, patience is not necessarily one of our strongest virtues when you know you have a lot of things to do in this world that are big and have a big impact. Like, you want stuff to happen, you know? And so it's really easy to fall into that trap as a driven entrepreneur, even purpose-driven entrepreneur, but just a driven entrepreneur in general. Entrepreneurs are going to fall into that trap because we're like, let's do this, right? We have this mentality. So the masculine energy is really able, like, you want to recognize when that sort of steps in as trying to like figure it out. So there's a relinquishing of control a little bit that's going to feel very uneasy to a lot of people, especially if you're more of like that type A personality where you sort of let go and you just know that it's on its way to you as far as like your next right step, your next breadcrumb of what you're going to talk about, write about, live stream about, teach about. But you're like creating space and you're letting it start bubbling up. So this is really getting into your yin, receptive, allowing energy, receiving the desire or setting the desire. They sort of go hand in hand. And then opening yourself up to receive, following the nudges, understanding that you're divinely guided, and then the masculine energy will deliver. However, the masculine energy will deliver because the masculine energy, its job is to protect and provide, right? So the masculine energy, ultimately, that's what its job is. So it's going to provide and deliver to you action to take action on, but it's inspired action. It's not the doing action that we think we need because we're in our mental body. It's inspired action, and it may come as a thought. It'll come as an inspiration. I'm sure everybody's had like a thought that really resonated with them. Like when you created your community, Megan, I'm sure like it lit something up inside of you to think about it. It inspired you from the inside out, and there was action involved, but it was a totally different action than the one that sits down with pen to paper, trying to brainstorm your bullet points for your next workshop from a place of external like motivation.
Yeah, there's a completely different feeling between like that forceful action and that action that's just like, holy shit, like I can't not do this. Like it's just like an overwhelming calling and sense of needing to move forward and create and expand. Like they're completely different energies. And I have experienced both of them, but absolutely, when you're in that inspired action alignment state, that is when the true magic happens.
Yeah, that's when the true magic happens. That's when you sort of call in the magician archetype, where things start to just manifest for you very quickly, and you get the result. You start to get results. Those will be the posts or the live streams or the podcasts that are truly authentic and in alignment with your soul. And those are going to be the ones that get you the most like interaction or engagement and things like that, and clients basically. Because that's obviously what we're here to do, is we're here to serve other people. And so clients are a big part of that formula. And if you're not acting from that place, you're actually like, your clients are all out there, they're watching you, they're, you know, but they're not magnetized to you. Like they may be like, they're sort of like, you may not even know it, but when you're posting authentically, they're still watching and they're being drawn to you. And then one day you write one post and they're like, I have to work with you. You don't even know how long they've been watching you. A lot of them will sit there silently, and they're not the ones hitting the like button, and they're not the ones like commenting and things like that. And then all of a sudden they say they've been watching you for 3 years, so, or 2 years, or they read your article like that you wrote 5 years ago. And these are certain examples that I'm sharing, but so you don't know when you're, so this is, I don't want to get ahead of myself because that's more lighthouse, more of the lighthouse effect that I'll talk about. But okay, so you're in this receptive mode, you're starting to receive inspired guidance. What trips up a lot of people is oftentimes that the guidance that comes through is what I call sacred action, which is action that requires some kind of courage attached to it, because there's like a little bit of fear between what you're supposed to be doing next. It's usually going to be asking you to be more vulnerable than you'd like, more authentic than you'd like, or reach a bigger audience, or do something that scares you. So a lot of times you're being stretched out of your comfort bubble in order to step up as a leader in your niche with your gift, and courage and faith is required. And so a lot of times this masculine energy is aligning us with actions that we need to take, but they're scary. And so a lot of people will procrastinate or stall in perfectionism or do all the other sabotaging tendencies, come up with all the stories of why they shouldn't move forward. So some people stop right in their tracks right there. They'll get the divine inspiration, and then they'll go grocery shopping, go to a yoga class, go to this grocery store, go do all these other things. And 2 days later, try to revisit what's happening, and the energy is lost. So one part of the lighthouse effect that I teach is it's like immediate marketing. It's like on the spot marketing. It's like in the moment marketing with your intuitive hits. Like there's no procrastination on what's coming through. Your intuition is not on your watch. Like when spirit comes through and has a message for you to share, it's not something that's completely timely or even convenient. It's just, it is what it is. So it's like, we'll find ways to procrastinate on it because it's getting us uncomfortable. Like whether it's the message that needed to be shared, or whether it's the platform that we wanted to go on, or whatever. Like for example, I used to be really scared to go on my personal page, even though there's like a total of 7,000 people there versus my business page where there's only 2. And that was a sacred action for me. And when I did do that, I then got so much more, like followers into my newsletter list and like receptivity. But it was just like, it's just an example of like a sacred action that was popping up for me when I was calling in my next steps. That was just like one example, and so that stalled me for a while. So I'm going to relate this sort of like to a dating scenario, because I like this metaphor, because I think it'll be fun to understand like the balance of the feminine and masculine energy in this regard. The opposite of being in the divine feminine energy, the one that's just sitting, the one that knows it's on its way, the one that's ready to receive, the one that's in full unwavering trust and faith, is the needy feminine energy. The one that's desperate for results, the one that needs to pay her bills and needs a client now or yesterday, or the one that just, so it's this needy feminine energy. So if you go to like a typical dating scenario where you have a man in his masculine energy and you have a woman with feminine energy, and I'm not saying like those can't be switched, you know what I mean, but just as a traditional example, the needy feminine energy is going to push the masculine man away, right, on a date. Like the needy feminine energy is like the girl that's like up sick to her stomach because it's been 40, because she's not getting the text messages back and she doesn't know what's going on and she's desperate for a result. That pushes the actual masculine man, the one that delivers and the one that provides, the strong masculine man, that pushes him away. It's the exact opposite of like the queen energy, like the divine feminine energy, the one that knows, the one that requires something, and that's just the way it is and it's coming to you. That's a totally different level of confidence and a total different level of ownership of your energy. That's the kind of energy that attracts the masculine energy in. Otherwise, you're pushing that masculine energy away. So you want to be in that trusting faith, full faith, and sort of relinquish control, allow the masculine to start to deliver options to you to take action, and then actually take that inspired action. So let me make sure I don't miss anything. And then this is a process. So for example, like when I was creating my program, Less Hustle, More Flow, I thought it would be nice to have more PR. So I asked, my guides or guidance or whatever, I sort of created space to receive more press. And it just so happened then I've received the intuitive guidance to redo my Less Hustle, More Flow, because there was so much more information I wanted to add to that sequence. And then it just so happens that as I was inspired to take those actions, start recreating my Less Hustle, More Flow series, 2 virtual conferences reached out to me within a span of 12 hours of setting that intention, wanting me to be a speaker exactly on that topic, exactly around the topic of the training that I was doing. So with no effort on my part, it was delivered and I was in a state of allowing it. And you might say, well, that's fine, Sarah, but it's not like that just popped out of the blue. You've been doing work prior to this. You've been building up to this. And that's true. The reason they found me online is because I have been talking about what I was, in the past, but it's because I've been working this process over and over again that they were attracted to it from the beginning. So remember, the desire is actually a manifestation, right? So once you get into the cycle of this and you're drawing from spirit and you're putting out, and you're drawing from spirit and you're putting out, and you're drawing from spirit and you're putting out, and you're drawing from spirit and you're putting out, and you create, and this is your creation cycle versus the opposite, sitting down with pen and paper trying to figure it out from a misaligned masculine place. You're creating momentum for your brand. You're creating visibility for yourself. You're creating consistency, you're creating continuity, but it's all coming from a higher source because you're allowing the sacred space for that intuitive guidance to come through, and you're working this process. So then it does make it a lot easier when you're completely in the flow with your divine message and what you're here to do, to plant an intention and have it pop up the same day or without any effort, because it still requires effort, but it's aligned effort. It's aligned action, the kind that you can't, like you said, you can't not do it action, the kind that you just have to do. Then the opportunities do pop up like magic, because I do believe you are in line with your soul path, and the universe supports you on that, and you're building this momentum. Had I not been following this process, would those people have found me online and asked me to then be on a virtual conference at the same time when I was setting the desire to receive it, or rather receiving the desire to receive it? Who knows? Probably not, right? Everything works out in the perfect way that it's supposed to, but when you plug in and tap into that and you don't mess up the process by getting in your head too much, trying to figure it out, or trying to come from some systemized approach to marketing versus an intuitive, flowy approach to marketing, then all of the pieces just start to plug together.
I love this. I love like that momentum cycle that you just spoke to. And I really liked the analogy of the kind of desperate feeling girl on the date that just is looking for all that external validation and just being needed and wanted. And I can relate to versions of myself where I felt the exact same thing. And I think a lot of women in this community are either there or they have been there as well. So what advice would you have for that woman that is there? Like, she's drafting content on Instagram and she just wants to get her message out, and she's just disappointed because nobody's seeing her content, and she just wants so desperately to get her message out and help and serve other people. From that place, that vibration, what is the first thing to do?
Well, okay, so we're going to jump for a second. So if that's happening and you're in this place of no one's resonating with your message and you're coming at it from a place of force like that and frustration, I can guarantee the messaging is not magnetic enough to attract the soulmate client in the first place. The energy is transferred. Like, the energy is transferred from the post. If you're not coming from an inspired, detached place where it's just for the pure fact of being of service through this because you have to share it, it's not going to resonate with your soulmate clients. And there's a part of surrendering to this process that releases that needy energetic vibration. So if you're coming at it with a needy vibration, you're just going to repel your clients. Mm-hmm. So the first thing would be to get really clear on the messaging. And there's so many different there's so many different things that could need to be tweaked. It could be her message in general. Like, is she really tapping into her true genius, or are her posts just fluff and they're not really emotional enough to engage her audience? Are they not really vulnerable or transparent or authentic? Is she speaking about herself, or is she speaking to their needs based on her own gift, like what it is she's really bringing to the table? So there's you have to be felt they want to be able to relate to you in a real, raw, authentic, vulnerable way, in order for your clients to want to work with you, especially online. Like they're not gonna be attracted. So there's a lot of different things that she could be stuck in, but the neediness energy is enough. That one alone, even, just the neediness energy is enough to push it away.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah. And so what happens is you push the masculine energy away when you're in that needy place. And then, so the way it should work is, and then let me not skip ahead too much. Let me say, so we're not doing anything for the sake of doing it, as far as, and I feel like in that example, that's what that girl was probably doing. She was doing for the sake of doing, because she was worried. She's more focused on not getting the results than actually just being of service. So that's never going to work as a spiritual entrepreneur. That's like goes against all spiritual laws. Has it, you know what I mean? Being of the highest service first and foremost should always be top center, and detaching from the outcome and knowing in full faith what you're putting out is in alignment with you, because you're honoring what's coming through and you're not trying to distort it to fit your ego's demands on what you think you want. When you're able to operate from truth, that's operating from truth. Truth is magnetic. Truth is magnetic. It does usually require vulnerability, transparency, and authenticity. And so that's going to spring up a lot of fear in people, because it opens up too much room for them to be judged and ridiculed, especially from people that they know online that are watching, people from high school, people from old jobs, like there's so many people, because they're going live online. Anybody could be watching them. There's a lot of fear around that, of being judged at first. There's a lot of like fraud syndrome, like second guessing yourself and like, who am I to be doing this kind of thing? Mm-hmm. Because when you take on a business that is solely related to your own personhood versus like, I've grown several businesses, and it was much easier to be an instant success in like real estate or with my spray tan, organic spray tanning beauty studio and these other things. Virtual assistant business was my first one, because it was easier for me to hide behind a real estate product or beauty products or a different service that wasn't related necessarily to my own personhood. But the minute you step into the path as a light worker, teacher, healer, and everything falls sort of back on like your own, you are your brand and it's your own personhood, then every little flaw or failure or anything that you think disqualifies or discredits you pops up to the surface to be healed, basically. Mm-hmm. Healed and released and let go. And usually it's those things that we try to run and hide from, or avoid, that would make us more appealing and attractive and magnetic to our client.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like how you said they're all opportunities to heal and expand.
Yeah. I've had to share lots of things that I normally wouldn't share that used to make me sick. They used to make me sick with anxiety in bed. I had to file bankruptcy after 2 foreclosures during the real estate crash. I didn't want to talk about that to people, but I realized that all of the things that I had went through my struggles, through like the shame that's associated with having these huge money issues and all this stuff, even though like half the country was underwater, like for some reason I internalized it. So because I had come from an upbringing where money was such a up and down thing, so I was just feeling like a failure, like a lot of my childhood. So long story short, I internalized things and I didn't talk about it. When I did start talking about some of the things that were more raw, real, and vulnerable for me, other people could relate to me a lot better. And they're like, oh my God, so when I shared things about child domestic violence and that I'd grown through, and like, all the things that we want to run from or hide from that we think disqualify us, actually just resonate with a lot of like what we're here to help heal, and how people are going to resonate with us, because a lot of people have been going through the same things. They just do it secretly, and they need someone that's a leader that can step up and be like, you can, none of this really matters. Like, that's not the point. You know what I mean? Like, unfortunately and fortunately, I feel as a spiritual teacher, healer, light worker, we showed up in this incarnation to be an example not just of abundance and money and good and joy and love, but also we sort of signed up to be like, we're going to grow through the muck kind of thing. And we're going to come out the other side shining. and we're going to tell our story and help other people heal through our story. And unfortunately, if you don't share the mucky parts, then nobody's going to relate to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the lighthouse effect, is like being real raw and vulnerable with, I'll just skip to that, a little bit of that right now, is really asking yourself, like, what is your true genius? Like, what have you really come full circle in? And the prompt that you might want to journal is, what have you truly escaped or freed yourself from?
Mm-hmm.
What have you truly escaped or freed yourself from?
I love that. I'm gonna write that as a post when I post this video, so everybody can answer that.
Yeah, because oftentimes, what's the there's so many quotes to this that I love too. Like Rumi's, like the light, the wound is where the light enters you. Like that's part of the hero's journey, right? Where you start to come full circle in your story, which is what you're using to help resonate with your clients. They're going to resonate with your stories. So like part of lighthouse effect is, what are your like 3 to 5 branding stories where you have come full circle, and what have you escaped? What have you freed yourself from? What have you come full circle in? What are those 5 stories that you can spin in different areas that other people are going to be able to relate to? Because the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions are so vulnerable and so real that they're going to read it and they're going to be like, oh my God, I resonated so much with your post. I need to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a true story. That's the kind of post that I'll get on an Instagram post. One post, $2,000. One post, paid in full client off of one post.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was real and authentic and vulnerable. And it spoke to the masculine energy, which is key, which I'll just throw out there. The masculine energy is the one that takes action and pulls out their credit card to purchase you as a client, as a coach. So you got to speak to the results, because the results speak to the masculine energy. The process and the step-by-step process speaks more to the feminine energy. So you do want to, that's one tip is, always lead with your results. And those are usually the posts that usually turn into the most sales and things like that, because you want to speak to the masculine energy, because that's the one that takes charge and takes action.
Mm-hmm.
But let me skip back to the rest of the yin-yang sales cycle. So you start to take action on your inspiration, and it's going to sort of hop back and forth now between here and the lighthouse effect. When this inspiration comes through, you don't want to this is why I never automate my marketing posts. Like I would never outsource my post creation. I would never outsource those things. I don't try to plan them a month in advance and put them in one of those like Hootsuite planners or anything like that. I can't do that, because I know my gift is channeling this content, and it's not something that I can do like on command, and it's not something that will come out authentic if I try to plan it ahead. Mm-hmm. So all of my posts are in the moment. I don't try to like plan them out. I don't sit on them if I don't think it's, oh, well, maybe I should post this next Monday instead of today. Like, no, it was coming through for a reason. So I post it the same day. I may then repurpose things. I do plant the intention that the energy that came through is what transfers to when I put it into my newsletter and things like that. So, but when I go live with it, whether it's a training or a podcast or a post, it's as quickly as I can while I'm in the energy of the divine inspiration. I'm taking some kind of action that is coming through to me. This is honoring that masculine divine energy that is in the process of delivering to you. The masculine energy is now providing to you. You have to be able to continue to receive and stay open, which is part of the feminine energy, but you got to take action on it. So this is the divine masculine energy taking action when and only when it's coming through. So if I'm not inspired to post, you won't hear from me. Like I just don't post to post. I don't post just to fill content. I don't give a shit about algorithms. You know what I mean? Like I just can't post for those reasons. And it just doesn't work for me. And I know I'm not really attracting to my audience too much. Like sometimes I guess I'll do like some filler posts with like quotes or something like that, but they're not like, I'm not sitting down trying to figure out what to post. Like it has to come authentically. And then the last part is like, you'll start to see results. So let's say you set the intention for getting a new client or booking discovery calls. What I see a lot of women doing is they get what they want, but it's not entirely what they want, because there's still a process at play that maybe their soul knows that there's still a few more steps, but they want it now. Their ego wants it now. So they set the intention that they want more discovery calls, and they got maybe 3, but they wanted 10. Or they sold 1 client, but they wanted 3. And so one of my clients, for example, she was starting a podcast. She got the intuition. She was excited. It was totally divinely inspired to start her podcast. And then she started creating episodes. But after like 2 weeks, she was upset because she wasn't getting any money from it. And it's like, that's not necessarily why the divine inspiration came to you. It was the breadcrumb, right? You just got to keep following the breadcrumbs. But you have to, and this is the last step, is you have to celebrate the wins when they come. So this would be the equivalent of, you're on a date, you're in receptive mode, you've attracted this masculine man, he's doing all the things, he's taking you to dinner, he's opening all the doors, you paid for a nice meal, he's courting you, he's like perfect date, delivering what you want. And then at the end of the date, you are not showing any appreciation for it. Like it wasn't exactly what you wanted. Like you wanted lobster and he bought you a steak or something like that. So it's like, you're basically telling the masculine energy, that's not good enough. And it's sort of like giving him a big F you kind of thing. And so when you think about this, even in the dating world, like when my boyfriend does something for me, what he's really looking for is appreciation. If you don't have appreciation for what's coming through, you're also breaking that cycle. If you're getting upset because you sold 1 client and not 3, you're missing the point. Like you're in the process of developing something that is very special, and that there's so much more involved than just what your ego thinks is your only target here. And thank God some of the things I originally thought were like, that the path has sort of detoured me to the point where it's always working out for me. So there's this trust and faith that has to stay unwavering through this process, but there has to be an appreciation and celebrate the little wins. Like I celebrated when I got those 2 virtual conferences that came through after I asked. I celebrated when, the client, like every single time, like I book a new Evolve member, like whatever it is, like it doesn't have to be like you're spending money or anything, but it does have to be like you're acknowledging and you're celebrating, and then you repeat the cycle.
I love that, because it's that like vibration of appreciation that opens us up to receive more, right?
Yeah, because what you appreciate, you receive more of. So you can see like the spiritual principles, the spiritual laws are hidden in this formula all over the place. You have the spiritual law of request, you have the spiritual law of intention, you have the spiritual law of surrender and faith, you have the spiritual law of, what you appreciate. I don't know if that's the law, but appreciation, everything you appreciate then grows stronger. So you're working with these like higher principles and you don't even really necessarily know it, versus working with more ego-driven, externally motivated, masculine dominant energies that are not sourced from the same intuition. So it's really about opening up to channeling and working with these spiritual principles with a very simple formula that can get your content flowing into like this beautiful cycle that will keep building and building and building and building once you get in the groove of it.
And doesn't it just like alleviate just all the pressure?
Yeah.
Your role is to be in that receptive mode and let the momentum go from there. That's just such a, right?
Yeah, because I don't have to plan anymore. I don't have to figure anything out. Like all I have to do is get myself into an inspired state by being open to it, asking for it, doing things I know that cultivate it, like eating healthy, going to the gym. I get a lot of downloads when I'm working out and I'm in a high vibe state. So my job is to be the clearest channel possible. And that involves being joyful, happy, healthy, and all of those things. So my personhood matters. So me living a healthy, happy, joyful lifestyle as much as possible and opening myself up to that, it creates like this ability for me to receive. And then that allows me to give back. And then I'm appreciative. And then that gives me more to receive that I'm more appreciative for. And it just keeps spiraling and snowballing from that place.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot of the pressure out because I don't have to plan anything. Like usually most of my programs I've channeled out in like 5 minutes. Some of them were, like a whole program came to me on the treadmill one time. My live streams, I only come up with a few bullet points because then like I have to trust that once I go live, I know it's going to come out. Like I know what I know my own experience. And so that's really, as a light worker and teacher, that's the only credential that you need. We're moving into a whole new marketing paradigm where nobody cares about book smart and nobody cares about like degrees. Everybody wants to know that you've gotten the results that they want. You've gotten the results that they want and you own it from a place of confidence. And so what I feel a lot of women fall into is fraud syndrome, because they don't necessarily have every single area of their life figured out yet. And that's why it's really important, like, to find out what is it that you truly shine at and have come full circle in and have, like I said, escaped from. Like, what have you escaped or freed yourself from? Like, what's your true genius that you can help people with? Because when you focus in on what you truly know for yourself, like, you can come from a place of confidence, and nobody cares if the rest of your life is completely figured out. Like, if I hire an astrologer that's really good at her craft of being an astrologist, I don't care if she's found her soulmate yet, or she has like everything dialed in with her home life, if she's an amazing astrologist, right? So what's your gift? Like, what are you really good at? Like, that is your genius, and focus on that and realize that you're not here to be perfect. And this is part of what I always say for myself is, everything that happens, I use for good. So that takes a lot of pressure off of being perfect and having everything together, because everything that I go through, use for good. Like, I remember when I was going through some major financial crises, and I was just like, this is going to make a hell of a success story one day. You know what I mean? Like, I knew I was living the content. You're living your content. Understand that you're living your content. So when you're going through a struggle, like, you're living your content, and you know what? You should probably share about it and be really vulnerable and authentic in a way that you still preserve your credibility, right? But you're also sharing from a place that is vulnerable and authentic, and understanding that everything's being used for good. Because like I said, fortunately and unfortunately, I feel, at least in my opinion, that we've signed up to some degree to be an example. And if you don't share your hardships of how you get to how you got to where you are now and what you're growing through, then nobody's going to resonate with you.
What's your thoughts on like sharing when you're like in the middle of the mess, or waiting till you have like some clarity and a bit of space between to share? Like, what's your take on that?
I would recommend sharing both. You're going to have a higher awareness after the dust has settled, but when you're in it, like, if you're feeling compelled to share, then I would share it. If you're feeling like I wish I could say this, but I don't want to feel stupid, or I don't want people to criticize or judge me, then you should be probably sharing it. If it's fear-based of being judged for it, then if that's the reason it's holding you back from sharing, then you should share it.
But if you're sharing it because like, oh, maybe this will be like interesting and it'll be a bit of drama and I'll get some likes, then that's a no.
Yeah, that's a no as well. That's a no, but you should be sharing it if it's like a fear-based, like, ooh, they're going to find out that I'm really like, who am I to be a coach now if I'm dealing with this or that or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask, to answer this question, like, what's the benefit of sharing in the midst of the chaos? Like, yeah. There's a huge benefit in sharing this. You're not claiming that you have to be an expert on it or anything like that, but like, sharing when you're in the midst of the chaos is instant, like, transparency and vulnerability and authenticity, which are the main elements of being able to do energetic marketing. And so, I shared when I was going through the middle of a really bad breakup, and like, everything felt like it was crumbling around me and things like that. So, and you don't have to share every single detail, but it does help to be able to share. And so that's why in the middle of stuff, and that's why I always say everything I always use is everything that I go through is used for good, because it puts a different spin on things when things aren't going exactly perfect in every area of your life.
What about like, you're speaking, this definitely resonates for like personal brands and people like coaches and stuff. What if you have like a spiritual service? What if you are like an astrologer or a psychic medium, or even like you have a marketing service that's spiritually focused? Is it that important then to still really have this story and be vulnerable, or is it only when we're really building up like a coaching practice or trying to resonate with people that are going through the same stuff that we have in the past?
Well, I mean, I feel like I see some big brands that are just doing like digital marketing, social media marketing, sharing their story. I see astrologers sharing their story and sharing all about like their own health crisis or their own twin flame experience as an astrologer. And then I see, you know, big marketers like Jasmine Starr, who's all about just like social media branding, and she goes into her story, and she shares very personal branding stories as well. So even if it's like she's more offering like a service, like branding, right?
Yeah.
So as far as a product goes, you know, I see that as well, but I speak more to like service entrepreneurs that are more like coaching teachers or healers, because that's my experience. But I see it online with big brands that are sharing their story authentic.
Yeah. And I've heard, like, I think maybe one of my coaches said this once as well, like, it's always good to establish your personal brand no matter what area you are in online, because you might move past certain products, services, offerings, and when you have that brand that you're building, that will carry through, you know, whatever you end up doing online afterwards. So
yeah, and people are really buying you when you're online. If you're doing anything online like that, people are really like, what's going to separate you from another astrologer? What's going to separate you from another, you know, social media expert or things like that? Like, you have to be able to set yourself apart, and that's how people resonate with you.
mm-hmm.
So, so being able to celebrate your successes is sort of, and then you repeat the cycle. Circle. Oh, I would switch back real quick. Yeah, the best stuff, your gold, will always come to you in the moment, when you're allowing yourself to receive that guidance. And so some of the ways I want to share real quick on how people get tripped up in this process, like the one that we already talked about was wanting to get stuck in the overdoing energy. As soon as an idea does hit, they're not patient enough to let it like fully flesh out just a little bit, and they start trying to, they haven't released control, so you start to take too much action. So that's like the misaligned doer, masculine energy. They might be trying to force an idea externally, that's externally guided, because they're watching, paying attention to too much what other people are doing online. And so they're saying, oh, well, that worked for her, so I'm going to try to do that now. Mm-hmm. So they're really trying to mimic someone else's model instead of just following true to them. Like, does it feel good to do a podcast, or does it not feel good to do a podcast? Like, is it coming through that that's what's needed, or should I be doing video, or should I be posting, or should I do guest posting? Like, should I do a collaboration? You know, like, is it coming through authentically and intuitively, or is it something that you're forcing? They're not creating space for intuition to flow. So maybe they need to strengthen their intuition muscle, like, and do more meditation and mindfulness, so they can really start to tap into intuition, because that is something that strengthens over time. Or they get stuck in fraud syndrome, which we touched on briefly, which is why I really recommend really tuning into what your true genius is, so you, and recognize you don't have to be jack of all trades and have your life fully together in order to go live and share your message, or write, or however you want to get your message out. They fall into like self-sabotaging tendencies like procrastination or perfectionism, and these are all like ways that the ego will sabotage to cover up belief patterns of that are keeping them stuck and playing small. So they play smaller, they dim their light. Procrastination is one way that will allow them to do that. Stalling and perfectionism is another way it'll allow them to do that. But underneath it is a belief system on a subconscious level that needs to be reprogrammed. So there might be some healing work there to do. And or they're coming from a really needy feminine place.
Yeah.
The last one is shiny object syndrome, is sort of ties in with the first thing I was talking about, but always thinking that, you know, they're always signing up for like the free webinars on the next thing to do, and then they get trapped in that little cycle, and they watch another 3-part series, and they're they don't know if they should be on Pinterest or Instagram. Like, they're just all over the place because there's so many different ways to grow your business. Like, you have to dial it way back and put your blinders on and tune in order to really tap into what wants to come through. And then the idea could be to be on Pinterest at that point. You know what I mean? That could be your next action, is to start your Pinterest page. But being stuck in that shiny object syndrome, I've seen as a huge part of what gets people tripped up and stuck in the overdoing masculine energy.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of that shiny object syndrome is, these impulses, but they're like fear-based impulses, because you spoke about like acting on inspired impulses. But I guess a lot of the times when there's, courses and platforms and just all these different ways to learn and get your message out there, a lot of it is decided based on like, I need this, like a lack kind of vibration, instead of like, this is coming through as something that feels right.
Yeah, so that's it's always starting off in that like needy position, then is just going to always call in the misaligned masculine energy versus the divine masculine energy. So it's just like you're calling in, you're not going to call in that guy that stands in his masculine energy on, that provides for you the perfect date. If you're in your needy, you're going to draw in the misaligned masculine energy, and that's going to be just doing for the sake of doing. He's going through that, just going through the actions, doing for the sake of doing, not really, there's no heart in it. It's just doing for the sake of doing.
I love this. I'm excited to learn more about your courses and your programs, because I know that you take women through all of this like pretty extensively in your Evolve program, right?
Yeah.
And you also do one-on-one coaching.
Yeah.
Can you maybe talk a little bit more? Is Evolve still open, or is that closed now?
Evolve is opening again in late September. So I've decided to open, it has quarterly enrollments.
Okay.
So we just had a summer enrollment that closed a month ago.
Can you maybe talk about your Evolve program, what that entails, and also what a one-on-one coaching relationship would entail with you? Because I feel like so many people, like including myself, would have immense benefit to have these types of conversations specifically directed to like the business and the brand that we're building. So yeah, please tell us more about what you offer.
Okay, so I actually think I might be shifting away from private, because I feel like called to help more women on a similar path all at the same time. So I'm thinking about launching, I've sort of planted that seed already, group coaching, no more than 10 women, spiritual entrepreneurs that are in this phase that wants to get really bold with their message, heighten their visibility, and really tap into what their genius is, and work with these energetic principles, and really work divine spiritual strategies like this for their business. So that's something I'm going to be launching like the end of September for 10 women only. And that might be a quarterly thing. It's going to be a group coaching program for 3 months.
Okay, it sounds kind of almost like a mastermind too, like
mastermind style group coaching, where I'll be able to on Zoom meet with 10 women weekly, and then they'll also be able to collaborate with each other and possibly build really lasting relationships with each other. But they'll all be on the same page and pretty much in the same place in their business. Like they've either already started their coaching business or teacher healer business or whatever, and they're probably making money in it already, but not as much as they would like, struggling to really magnetize their message and create content like on flow like that. Or they're just getting started, but they still have another job to support them while they're doing this, and they want to get their side hustle finally into the limelight, so to speak, and like visible. Overcome fraud syndrome. So basically what we talked about today, but in a 3-month program, walking you through hands-on, and I'm going to bring in a branding expert as well that talks specifically more about branding specifically. So that's a 10-month, or that's a 10-person only small mastermind style group coaching program. Evolve is, so that's like, Evolve is more like you still have a lot of healing work to do. And it centers a lot around like inner child healing work and working with the 4 sabotaging archetypes, fear-based sabotaging archetypes. And we do a lot of chakra work, a lot of meditation kind of work in there, but really good, amazing transformations that are happening in there. And it opens quarterly. So that's my membership, and that's like sort of like my baby. It's got, I think there's like 7 women in there right now. So it's still sort of small, which is perfect. It's like the perfect amount of women in there right now. Next enrollment, I'm aiming just to bring in 13 more. And so you get bi-monthly laser coaching every single 2 weeks with me. And then you get weekly live stream trainings in the private Facebook group every week. And it's a community that's super supportive. Everybody's growing through their own traumas and dramas. Like they're healing things that they've been holding on for decades, the things that keep them dimming their light, the things that the aspects of themselves that they've disowned and forgotten about, the inner child healing work that they stuff under the rug, like everything comes up to the surface. Synchronicities start popping up like crazy. They're releasing, they're allowing themselves to feel their emotions where normally they would have stuffed. So everybody's like on their own separate journey, but it's a mix of trainings that have already been recorded through the course of Evolve already, and then trainings with me one-on-one every 2 weeks, and then like this, like on video, and then live stream every week. So they get a lot of interaction. It's $199 a month for that program.
That is a really good deal, I think, for everything that includes, and obviously the transformation I think that would come out of that.
So yeah, they also get the VIP option also gets like Voxer, one-on-one Voxer support. So I have like, everybody has me on their speed dial. You can purchase at a very discounted rate one-on-one sessions as the VIP option to supplement your coaching in Evolve if you want to. And I have several women that have taken advantage of that, and they get the private coaching at a fraction of what private coaching would cost.
Yeah. Amazing. And I know you were also, this is relevant for everyone in the Consciousness Collective community, trying to find like a network or a database of like healers and light workers to use within your community. Is that right? I remember you posting something about that. Is that still available?
Yeah, I forget what I posted. I know I'm looking for people to come on to my podcast, to apply for the podcast. And I did, actually, one of the members, I think Deneen Tyler, she is now part of the Evolve, like as of now. It's been working out really well. She's actually leading a full moon releasing tarot astrology session inside Evolve. So I brought her on separately, and she comes in as a guest teacher, and I'm sure there's going to be more things like that, because as Evolve grows, I want to make it, like, my goal is to make it like the most affordable spiritual mentorship program like on the planet, and touch and bring in other specialties, because I've always used tarot and astrology, but that's not my specialty. So bring in other people that can contribute to the whole. Mm-hmm. And so it's growing like that. It's perfect.
I love it. I love it. And that's what we're all about in this community. So what we're going to do, this is going to be posted in the Facebook group. A lot of you will be watching on Facebook. Hi. And we're going to link to Sarah's website, to her programs, to her Instagram. She, like I said, is part of the Consciousness Collective. So this is a great opportunity to get to know her as a member of the collective, to see if you feel resonant with any collaboration opportunities with Sarah, but also I think a lot of you just kind of hearing from, you know, I've spoken to all of you one-on-one and hearing where you're at in your business. I think that Sarah's programs and working with her are just going to be so beneficial to really articulating that magnetic message, and just getting in that lovely divine feminine flow of marketing and receiving, and just putting this work out into the world and leveraging the masculine to take the action, just as you said. So yes, you'll be able to find information on Sarah and her courses in the links, and she's in the collective, so reach out to her whenever you want. Thank you so much for doing this training today, and I just look forward to working with you so much more in the future.
Thank you, Megan, for having me. This is fun.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.